Yeah.
You did it, Gary. It
All
sounded like
right,
it was going to
guys.
be a little bit of a wrestling match to start.
Well, yeah, I just got this new iPad and I hadn't downloaded my email, so yeah, that was a good go around. So,
Good. Well, I'm glad it worked out.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this with us. Where are you joining us from tonight?
I'm in Alder, Montana.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good place to start because I showed Ben that video you sent me. Like, tell us about your day. What were you doing today?
Yeah. Well, today I weaned 12 head of foals, and normally I'm better prepared and I have them halter broke before I wean, but I just had major back surgery end of June, so I wasn't able to really get in there and I didn't want to take the chance of getting knocked down or kicked or whatever. So I opted to wean and now halter break, and I don't really like doing that because when you got the mother, you can lead the baby onto the trailer to get him to a vet, but now I'll have a little harder time if I need to get her to a doctor or get the babies to a doctor. So, yeah, it was a good day. I mean, beautiful day. This has been an amazing summer. My brother came down from Alaska to pheasant hunt with me last week and spent some time on the ranch with me, and he couldn't believe it. He said, we have the beautiful fall colors right now, but the grass is green. And it's like we're spring and the leaves didn't fall off the tree. We're still so green. It's amazing. It's just green grass and beautiful fall colors. We never get that. My 60 plus years, I've never had this kind of a summer. It's been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, the colts are fat, the calves are fat, so yeah, we're happy.
So, you mentioned that it was a lot of work. I haven't really been a part of much of a breeding operation or anything like that. So, what goes into all that? Is it just kind of getting your facility ready to where you feel good about how you got them separated and things like that?
Yeah, I have two bands of mares because I have two stallions, two stud horses. One's a running horse who was he's a Coronado Cartel by a Mr. Jess Perry daughter. So he's pretty fashionable in the running world. And then I have a cow horse that's at a Fralix tank horse, that dancing rooster, and one of my good mares. So those are my two stallions. I split them up, and now today I joined the foals together, and yeah, a little stressful. Today is the hardest day of the year for me because most of the mamas are mad at me. Some aren't. They're ready to get rid of that that colt sucking the life out of them, but but most of them are nervous and upset, and then the babies are, they're screaming. And they'll be that way for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, and they'll settle down, and they're it starts out they're whinnying for their mothers, and then when you get in there and you're feeding them and you're throwing them fresh hay and good grain and kind of rubbing on them, getting to touch them. Then it's kind of cool when you show up. They're whinnying for you. They're glad to see you. So, but today breaks your heart, man. It's the hardest day of the year.
I imagine that's a bit like weaning calves, huh?
Oh yeah, maybe worse though. The foals, have that high pitched squeal, and they're they're sweated up and nervous and yeah, so I'd much rather wean calves than foals. But
would you rather wean a big group of foals at once or a smaller group of foals at once?
Oh gosh, probably a smaller group. It's less, the more you have, the more stress you have, and it's kind of, as soon as as soon as a horse is born, it spends the rest of its life trying to kill itself or hurt itself, and so it's started, 4 or 5 months ago, but it's, it can be heartbreaking just from the whinnying, but if you happen to lose one, which I had really nice filly, lost her about 3 weeks after weaning, and that's hard. It's takes something out of you. But the only horse and the only dog that won't break your heart is the one that's going to outlive you. So
Yeah,
and
that's a good way to put it.
And I used to, when I was younger in my 20s or teens, and I'd lose a foal or lose a calf, or I'd get all upset. My father-in-law gave me some really good advice. He says, Carrie, you got to quit getting so upset. If you're going to be in this business, this stuff happens. It happens, and he says, and I'm not willing to go through life without a dog or a horse or a cow, and so. I'm willing to take those hard knocks that we get, and we get a lot of them in this business.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, my dad always says the only way you can lose a good one is to have a good one. So that's
that's well said.
Yeah,
that's well said. Yeah.
So these colts that you weaned, what what are they destined for? Are you going to sell these colts or?
Yeah, I've got probably I don't know, I probably have 8 of them sold before I wean. So that's kind of nice to get them gone, and and the sooner you can get them off the place, the better you are, because when you hold them, you have risk.
Right.
It's nice to turn that risk over to somebody else, and if I'm like, I've got some foals going out to Western Washington, and I suggest that they insure them. I feel better if they insure them, because if something happens, they get their money back, and don't want them buying a dead foal, or or a lame or a crippled foal. So I highly recommend they insure them once they buy them.
So you're saying you recommend they insure the foal if they kind of pre-buy it from you, and so the time it spends with you and the transport to them.
Yeah, you bet. So
yeah.
for instance, I bought a bull one time from a good friend, and said, yeah, I'll take him, and I was like 2 weeks before I could get there and get him and ready for him. Well, the bull got his head stuck in a gate and died, and I bought a dead bull. So I highly recommend insurance from
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you got your weaning process, obviously it probably depends on logistics a little bit, but if you got something like that sold, when are you gonna ship it to the new owner?
Sometimes they come and get them, but like, I'm going to go out with a load, I'm take probably 6 horses towards the West Coast here, in a week or so. So,
okay.
And then backing up the breeding, the breeding is that's kind of, with this genetics, it's kind of the last frontier to me. It's just so cool to match a mare with a good stallion. Now every year I tell myself, oh, this is the best colt crop I've ever had. Well, it should be. It should be, if you're doing things right, if you're matching your mares right, and you're rolling new genetics, new mares into your breeding program and everything. That's, you bet every year should be better than the last.
Mm-hmm.
And my deal is I like to look at each mare individual. And I've done that for like the past 15 years, probably, where I look at that mare and I say, what do I need to do to make her better? Does she need a better head? Does she need more hip, better front end, better feet? then you go out and you try to find that stallion that's going to make her better, her offspring better than what she is, and that's how you get better, and then there's so much into this breeding with the mind and the conformation and the color, and whether they're good movers, and so yeah, sometimes you hit a home run and sometimes you kind of go, oh, probably won't do that again. So.
And is there a specific job that you have in mind for the horses that you're hoping to breed?
Yeah, I guess is what it would have to say is I want a good horse with a good mind that can outrun a cow, and I do have a lot of roan horses, and the roans sell. They do sell, but my best foals have been sorrels. I hate to say it, but the best foals I've ever raised are sorrels, and so and you can run a sorrel, the best looking sorrel in, and if they're not a really, really good horseman or know what they're looking at, they'll take the blue roan that's half the horse almost every time, but.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that I've kind of asked people for their 2 cents on, and I'm curious what you think, but I know a lot of old cowboys will say, any real cowboy just likes a bay horse or a sorrel horse. And is there anything, do you think there's anything beyond superstition to that, or what, if there is a real reason, why do you think a simpler, like a bay or a sorrel, is oftentimes better than a paint or a roan horse?
Well, I think they're more common. They're more common, and everybody sees them. And I mean, you pull up their Brandon and you unload a good-looking roan horse out of the trailer. Everybody goes, "Whoa, where'd he come from?" But the really good horse people look at that sorrel when you unload him, and they'll go, "Oh, that's a nice horse." But I try to be colorblind, but I got to tell you, color sells.
Mm-hmm.
And but you take like the stallions, when you turn them in, and oh wow, I don't care what color that stallion is, they just glow. They just glow with the oils coming off their coat because of the high testosterone. And when you see that's why stallions kind of stand out, is because they have that shine, and testosterone creates oil. Therefore, that makes that stallion where a mare has estrogen, and that not nearly as shiny as what a stallion would be. And it's kind of interesting. I had this old cowman years ago, and I learned a lot from the guy, and it was mostly in cattle, but it kind of pertains to horses, and I don't know, a lot of people think I'm crazy by saying this, but I can actually, if I really study my mares before they foal, and that mare is a little shinier than the rest, I'm going to tell you she's packing a stud colt. Just because his testosterone is making her hair shine. And with the estrogen, if it's a filly in her, and she's getting a double shot of estrogen, you'll see her hair kind of like if you rubbed your hair with a balloon, and it kind of it'll be a little more frizzy and a little more staticky if that mare is packing. I haven't proven all this, but there's some truth to it. There's some, especially in cattle. I can kind of pick them in cattle. Horses, maybe not quite as much, but I'm better than 75% guessing that what they're packing. Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, if you rubbed your hair on with a balloon, that there's more estrogen. And he told me, and I don't know if there's much truth to this, but if your wife or girlfriend or your other half is having a bad hair dye, having a bad hair day, she's probably ovulating.
So if you see her coming and her hair is all frizzed up, you turn and go the other way, or don't argue.
Yeah. So yeah, that's you know. So that's a lot of that. I don't know. If, I can't really verify that, but he was pretty set on it. I mean, and then when you're picking stallions, they masculinity in a stallion makes femininity in your mares. The more masculine your stallion, and I'm not saying a rough, but if you have a nice muscled up, heavy jawed stallion, he'll probably create his daughters will probably be very feminine.
Hmm.
And that's just something to think about. And you can prove me wrong, or you can not. But I've seen that. I've seen that especially in people where we have men throughout the valley, old timers that were the big, strong, masculine men, have the prettiest feminine daughters. So, and I've seen it in cattle, and I've seen it in somewhat in horses, but to have that good feminine mare that you want to have, that filly where it's kind of like a greater than, less than sign, where her head is small and goes back, and the further she goes back, she just keeps get deeper to the hip. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I want my mares feminine. I don't want my mares to look like a, a gilding, or and I want my gildings to look masculine also. So I'll sometimes I don't castrate them until they're well past a year old, just so I can get a little jaw and a little better neck on them, and so my gildings don't look like mares.
Waiting that long to geld them, how does that affect their overall size when they finish out?
Oh, there's two schools of thoughts on that. Some people say they grow better, and then some people say they don't. So I don't know if I could prove either way.
Hmm.
It's hard to prove that way, but I know I like the jaw set of a gilding it, because if they have a good jaw, then it kind of cleans up the throat latch, or makes that throat latch look cleaner to me. And I'm big on that. I want that head and neck to be, especially in a bridle horse. I want that throat latch really clean, and where that
Hmm.
horse bridles up nice.
Besides that, on a stallion, what are some of the more masculine traits you look for?
Well, gosh, good feet, and I like a short cannon bone, good forearm. I like muscle. I like muscle. I looked a long time to find my running horse with short because typically running horses have a little longer cannon bone and a little higher hock set, and I don't like that. I want my hawk to set lower in the back, especially on my running horses. Took a while to find the horse that I really liked on that. Like on a good cow horse, that hawk sets low, where they can get that hind leg up under themselves better to work that cow or work off their hind end. And and when it comes to halter breaking, there's a huge difference between a running horse and a cow horse, where you have a lot more tendency of a cow horse to flip over backwards on you, because they'll get up and rear up, where a running horse just wants forward movement. He just wants to go forward. There's not much rear to him. So when I first time halter a baby cow horse, whether it's a filly or a stud colt, I make damn sure that I'm in a good sanded corral, and if they do rear up, you got to kind of pull them over on their side before they get too high. You don't want them smacking their head, And if they're too quick and they get there before you can pull them to the side, then you got to get short on that halter rope fast and lift as hard as you can so that head doesn't smack if they come over backwards on you. But it's been a while since one's got me that way. But when I was first doing it, I had a couple flip over, but I made damn sure I was in a good sandy corral, round pen. Because that's probably the most dangerous part of, I think, is the first haltering on a baby when you got to be dang careful that you don't, you just can't get too far behind them. You keep that angle pretty unsteep. You almost don't want to stay at a 90-degree angle. If you get back towards that hip too far, that will have a tendency to pull them over backwards. So you got to reach out. And,
and when you say running bred, was he like bred for like quarter mile racing or like barrel racing, or how was he
well,
bred?
he's a grandson of Corona Cartel. My running horse is, and he's the son of Coronado Cartel, who stands at the Lazy E. And I don't know, it was 4 or 5 years ago. I went down to Texas and went to the Lazy E's in Oklahoma, but went in there and I saw Coronado Cartel, and Corona Cartel was there. He was still alive, and that's why I wanted to go see him. It's like seeing Secretariat or Dashed for Cash or First Down Dash. He's in their league. Corona Cartel was, and I got to see him. And then they led his son Coronado Cartel out, and my jaw hit the floor. It was like, wow, that is the most gorgeous stallion I've ever seen in my life. And so I spent the next couple years trying to find a son of his. And a guy by the name of Hans Peterson down in Utah, Logan, Utah, found him for me. He deals in horses a lot, and he'll find you about anything you want. Very knowledgeable man. So I run a lot of stuff by him.
Yeah. And before we deviate from this stud, because I got a lot more questions now.
Okay.
What's the rhetoric behind having the shorter cannon bones and the lower hock?
Well, soundness. I'm going to say soundness is, and for that short cannon bone. And then you want that forearm to be nice and lengthy. Also, that helps in the stride. The slope of the shoulder. The flatter that shoulder is, the better they're going to ride. They're not going to be so choppy and if he's pounding the ground, then he's not going to stay sound very long. So that nice long forearm and the angle of shoulder does mean something. It's not quite as critical, I don't think, in the quarter horse world as it is in the dressage or the standard breds or whatever, when they're trying to get that really, really far extension. I don't think we need our quarter horses doing that, because we're working cattle, and we kind of keep them more gathered up than the big the big scopy movement. They talk a lot about scope in that world, and I think that's just basic extended reach and maybe lift. And I don't think it's near as important in our quarter horses, but I still don't want that shoulder too steep.
Right.
Okay. And then, whenever I go traveling, say if I go into Texas or Oklahoma or California with my truck or trailer, I have my semen tank with me. And because, there's good stallions down there. Thank God for oil money, because we have some really good horses down there in Oklahoma and Texas, and it's all due to oil money, and California. And so when I get in that country, if there's a stallion I want, I'll go in and put him in my tank. And because I don't like to pay for shipping. I don't like, and I prefer I actually prefer frozen semen over fresh. And especially if I don't know my mare. I mean, if I know my mare, I can probably order my semen fine. But if you're ultrasounding your mares and you're breeding AI, which is such a huge advantage, being able to breed all these stallions basically around the U.S. or Canada, and if you know your mare and when she ovulates, when that follicle bursts, whether it's 50 or 52 in your ultrasound, and you know right, you can kind of time your fresh semen to get there. But man, I just like to be able to ultrasound, know where that follicle is, and just have that semen in the tank waiting to go in her, and then you deep horn inseminate. And so I much prefer frozen over fresh. And I'm going to tell you, 80% of the horsemen out there will tell you I'm crazy. But the fresh, and I there's probably there is truth to it. But let you take a really good stallion. Let's say you take a really good stallion that's really popular, and they get 20 orders on him in one day. Well, they're going to collect him, and they're going to dilute the heck out of that semen to satisfy all 20 customers, right? And so you sometimes your fresh isn't as good as your frozen. It's been my experience, because you gotta get semen to them. They got, and it's not their fault. That's not that stallion owner's fault, because that mare is ovulating and they need semen, so he's going to get what they can to him. And if he's really popular, that semen is really diluted. Where I pull it out of the tank and thaw frozen, I can put it in at any time. So.
Hey Ben, do we need Gary to tip his iPad just a little bit more?
Yeah, we probably should.
Or yeah, just tip it down just a hair more.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Let me see. Oh, I'm trying to block some behind it there.
Oh yeah, you've got something that's leaning against. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think in the final edit, it'll be a little bit better than it was a minute ago, but that's even better.
Okay.
Cool.
So I know I'm kind of rattling, guys. So I'm not allowing you to ask too many questions, because it just rolls into one to another. What else can I answer for you?
Well, no, you're doing fine. I mean, you're obviously very knowledgeable about this. One of the questions I'd have for you is, what are your thoughts on all these backyard breeders? Joe and I both deal with, and maybe that's more of an East Coast thing, but we deal with the public in the horse industry some, and you'll have somebody with the exact mare that you described earlier that you would not breed, and they're all excited that they got this mare, and you ask them what they're going to do with it, and they say, "Oh, I'll ride it for a little while, and then we're going to breed it to so and so," and then and everybody's always talking about stuff like that, and then you get these horses from people. I remember last summer, I think I had 4 different colts that were 3-year-olds, and every one of them had terrible conformation. And most of these people that had it bred, or their friend bred it, and it's all this backyard horse breeding. And do you, like, over the years that you've been involved in this, like, this is kind of your industry, so you would probably have more of a feel on what way that's going. Do you think that's a more common thing or a less common thing? And why do you think so many people would want to just breed horses on their own? It's just kind of odd to me. Like, it never occurred to me that I just want to breed horses. I would want to leave it up to someone like you, or someone invested in it and knowledgeable. And the more I've gotten into the horse industry, the more I've noticed a lot of people just very interested in breeding whatever old horse they own.
Well, a lot of them probably don't know any better, but here, we live in a free country, right? And they're allowed to do that. And I hope they're always allowed to do that. because it is a free country we live in. I don't want anybody telling me whether I can breed a horse or not, so I'm not going to tell anybody else. But you are right. You are right. There's, I guess I'm really probably going to upset some people with the statement I'm going to make, but it's no damn different than this Mustang stuff that goes on, and basically as a horse breeder, I'm competing against the U.S. government to sell horses, and I guarantee you mine are better. And so, but more power to people if they want to go out and spend $2 for a Mustang. That's probably going to end up hurting them. That's their prerogative, If they ever, I'm not saying none of them turn out good, but the vast majority are kind of unrideable and not safe. But yet, that's a problem we have. We have a lot. Wow. And I don't have the answer for it on this Mustang deal. How we control that, where we've got just feedlots full of horses, and it's kind of a sad situation because eventually they're going to starve to death if they don't do something. There's going to be no feed for them. They're gonna. So I mean, so then you got the two breeders there, the Mustangs and the backyard breeders, and um, yeah, that's just a tough situation on both of them. I don't know the answers.
Hmm. Well, that was a good example, bringing the Mustangs into that, because, well, I mean, think of if somebody was going to get into the cattle business, they wouldn't go to Arizona and get a bunch of desert cows or somewhere like that and find a bunch of cows
Yeah.
on BLM land. They would go find some good seed stock and get started small and grow a good herd. But somehow with
Mhm.
horses, a lot of smaller, you know, a lot of backyard folks are like, well, we'll go get a $200 Mustang versus
Yeah.
buying a $3,000 to $5,000 colt. And in the
Hmm.
end, whether it's vet bills or a trainer or their lifelong investment in becoming a horseman, they're going to pay a hell of a lot more than the fuel and the adoption fee for a
Oh,
Mustang. And they're
yeah.
going to still have a jug head on the end of a lead rope.
Well, yeah, and it's gosh darn, I've seen some nice Mustangs too. Don't I can't say I don't want to offend anybody, but like I say, the vast majority aren't. But I've seen some good ones. But you know what? The people that have good ones are horsemen or horsewomen. They're damn sure prepared to handle that horse, and some aren't.
Mm-hmm. I, I don't know if you had listened to it, Gary, but we actually we had an episode like on basically the Mustang issue
Oh,
with uh, yeah, a friend of mine, well, a friend of ours now, Cliff Williamson, who he he was a part of the American Horse Council for the last 10 years. And so he dealt like in Washington D.C. He was basically a lobbyist, kind of dealing with Mustang issues and stuff like that, and along with other things, anything horse industry related. And he made the point with the Mustang thing. You know, he's like the only thing Mustangs in general are really good at is staying alive and making more Mustangs. But
yeah,
it's not like they like a lot of them don't see all that well. The legs and the feet aren't that great. Like they're not designed kind of to do a job the way you might talk about your horses and the conformation you want to do all that. They're it's like pronghorn or deer or something. Like as long as they could stay alive and have babies, those genes got pushed down, like
yeah.
pushed down. So um yeah, it's not that they're not good at anything, but they might not be designed for the job people want to use them for.
Mhm. In the mind, I mean, they're not breeding for the mind. I mean, it comes down to and I don't want to compare the two, but like in Texas, Oklahoma, where the feral hogs are just a huge problem. And, you can go down there and rent a helicopter and an AR-15 and go hog hunting, and that's how they're trying to control the population. On the hogs, well, could you imagine if they were doing that with horses? The public outcry would happen. I mean, so, but I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what we should hunt horses with a helicopter. But man, I don't know what we do to control the numbers. It's not easy.
Well, you say you don't want to compare the two, but I mean, either way, it's like, okay, let me tell you something about how this non-native Eurasian species is destroying farmland across the American West.
Yeah.
Like on paper, if you never saw a picture of a pig and a horse on paper, if you just like put all that, it's almost the exact same issue.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know, maybe you guys did. I wish I'd listened to that podcast before I talked to you guys. Maybe I'm covering the same stuff you guys did.
no. Well, it probably about 6 months ago, but anyway,
Okay.
for you and anyone listening, you should go back and watch our episode with Cliff
I
Williamson
will. I
on
will.
that. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
no,
not them all, but I've enjoyed. You've had some great. You guys do a great job interviewing, and
Thank you.
yeah.
oh, thanks.
Well,
yeah.
we were fortunate to have Cliff on because he's probably, realistically, probably one of the most knowledgeable people out there on this subject, just because he was paid by the federal government to try and find solutions to this issue, right? So there's a lot of people who give you their 2 cents, but when it's actually your full-time job to investigate it and talk to all the stakeholders, you get a much bigger picture,
Yeah, and we have, no, we had a real big herd of wild horses in the Ruby here years ago, but it's been 30 or 40 years where they gathered them up and they're with helicopters, and now our problem's wolves. And we have a huge wolf problem. I've lost horses to wolves. So,
Wow.
yeah. That's for another day. That's
And what do you do when that happens? I mean, is it just say la vie, or do you report that in any way, or
you
how does that
try
work?
to. I mean, back when I had the problem, no, I can't tell you the solution. I know the solution, but I'm not going to tell you.
Sure.
I might privately, but
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, there was a point in time here where you're better off shooting a human than you were a wolf here in Montana.
Yeah.
15 years ago when they introduced them into Yellowstone, it was, but, and we luckily we have a really good government trapper here in the local area, and he'll when we have a coyote or a predator problem, he rents a helicopter and he goes after them, and is very effective on it.
But then what are they doing with a trapped animal?
Oh, he's shooting them.
So he's not just a trapper.
Yeah,
Just a word. I got you. Yeah.
Well, he does both. But he does trap, but he's more of a sniper. Put it this way, he's a guy you wouldn't want hunting you.
Okay.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah, and he's good at his job, and
Yeah. So Gary, one of the first people I had recommend you actually was I don't know if you remember, but I know he's talked to you a time or two. You might know our mutual friend Nathan Hahn. I don't know if you remember that name or not, but he met you.
I do know the name, but I don't know if I would.
Yeah, he's a friend of ours from Kentucky.
Okay.
And I think he met you not at this past Fralick sale, but like the Fralick sale 2 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
And so he said he was talking to you, and he mentioned how knowledgeable you were on all these lines and stuff. And you kind of struck up a conversation with him about, well, what are you interested in, this or that, or whatever. And Nathan told you, and he said you looked at him and said like, oh, you're wanting to make bridle horses, aren't you? And Nathan said, yeah. And he's like, yeah, those are the lines right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you remember that interaction or not, but it really interests me because the whole bridle horse thing, that's something that Ben and I are pursuing, and we're kind of still both in kind of our infancy in that journey. But something I haven't really heard people talk about, and not that it's the most important thing, obviously, but the conformation of a bridle horse, or like when you look at maybe a colt, say someone like Ben or I, who we want to go out there and make bridle horses, and we have the opportunity to go buy a colt. Obviously there's personal preference, but in your opinion, what would you look for?
I think the most impressive thing on a bridle horse is like a nice swan neck,
Okay.
where you see it. Maybe it's just a little bit longer neck and thinner throat latch, and yeah, it's just, to me. I mean, I'd love to see that swan-like neck and a big hip. Um, so I guess that's kind of what, to me, you watch how Buck rides, and you watch the headset of his horses, and when he was riding those big Passamani Paul horses, and how beautiful, were the Arcs and the Rebels, and oh man, Stedman, and those were just so beautiful, beautiful bridle horses. And they had a little bit longer neck, and they all had those beautiful long swan necks and thin throat latches, and that's, I guess, that's what really excites me. And where you guys are starting out, you're not starting out. Hell, you guys are riding good. You guys are probably more knowledgeable than a lot of people, and I don't think it's fair to yourself to say, well, we're just getting started in this deal. But you know, start making bridle horses. I mean, just, you really want to get Buck's attention, make a bridle horse. You won't believe how that changes his view of you when you're trying to make a bridle horse. And that's and great story. He, I don't know, the first bridle horse I made was probably 25, 30 years ago. And when I was ready, he bought my bridle setup and handed it to me and said, Gary, I want you to have this. She's ready for the bridle. And I was like, couldn't hold the tears back, And once I started making bridle horses, you could just see the excitement that he was showing me. I wasn't out just, starting colts anymore and making bridle horses. And that excites him when his students start doing that. So, make bridle horses.
Just like that. sounds easy.
Well, it's kind of like he says, when I made my first one, he goes, well, I hope that's the worst bridle horse you ever make.
Yeah. 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 We say that around here a lot. Today's the worst I'll ever be.
I think Bill will tell you that too. That Buck gets excited when you start making bridle horses, and you ought to too. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time on here. We talk with all of our guests about what they're doing and why they do what they do. But for Joe and I, it comes back to that. With horses, it was seeing Buck ride his bridle horses.
Oh yeah, it's so inspirational.
And, there's so many things you can do with horses. But I know I like riding horses. But the part of the horse that I love is thinking about making a bridle horse. And thinking about what that'll, and I know the first couple bridle horses will be kind of crappy, but down the road to think of being on a horse.
No,
And
they
you think
won't.
of like that, like
Well,
like
you're
buck
wrong
hunting.
there. They're not. They're
Yeah.
not going to be crappy. They're going to be the best horses you ever rode.
Yes.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's a
Unless you
positive
get
way to
on
look
one
at
of
it.
Buck's or one of Bill's, but yeah, if you're trying to make that, that's going to be the best horse you ever rode. I mean, the best horse I ever rode was one I made. Well, I can't say that. I rode a couple of Bucks, but in a Betty Staley's, I rode one of her dressage horses. That and those were incredible. But hopefully the best horse you ever ride you made. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Gary, when was the first time you met Buck?
oh, we were in grade school.
How old were you?
Oh man, sixth grade. I'm gonna say
Phew.
sixth grade. So what are you?
Sixth grade, you're like 11 years old.
Yeah, probably
11 or
11 or
12.
12. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, how about that? So I've heard
Had a
this
lot.
story about him. So that must have been a little after he was going around. He had this funny story recently about getting chased by people on his bicycle on the way home. So he finally went and bought a lady's bicycle so he could barrel off of it a little bit faster.
Yeah, that was probably
But
when he
not
was
to
a
run away,
boy.
but barrel off it so he could go attack them. But was he still doing that when you met him, or was he already moved up
I
to a
think
boy's
that was
bicycle?
days in Whitehall. He'd moved to Ennis then when we met. But yeah, that was. Yeah, he's got 1,000 stories like that. But yeah, well, because he rides me like a rented mule, and I mean he can. But I get even with him when I get him in the float boat, which he used to come out every year, like almost a week before the clinic, and we'd fly fish and drink whiskey and fly fish and have a good time. And him and Shane Jackson saved me one time from drowning in the bear trap. If it wasn't for Buck's quick reaction, I would not be sitting here today. So that's probably another story for another time. But yeah.
So, what was your upbringing like, Gary? Like, did you grow up being a ranch kid, or did you live in town, or?
No, my dad ran several ranches throughout Montana. Started in the Hamville area, western Montana, and then went to Livingston and ran a ranch for a while in Winnett, Montana, and then back to Ennis, kind of where I did most of my growing up. But he kind of got out of the ranching and kind of went into heavy equipment and that. So I was pretty lucky. My dad treated me like a man when I was young and worked me like a man. But oh man, the benefits I got from that. I mean, he was amazing. Was amazing, and he was one of those old time cowboys that kind of was a little rough, but yet we had some hired men that would come in and out, and a couple of them were pretty good horsemen. And I learned a lot from them. My dad really respected them, you know. And nowadays when Dad gets on one of my horses, he's just like, "Wow, never had a horse this nice," and you can tell him when I'm working on colts or something like that. He's just amazed. He's amazed because he didn't get none of this. He didn't get Tom or Ray or Buck, and I was lucky to get all three. And
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure that's like a really good feeling when like your dad can get on one of your horses and say, yeah, that's a cool feeling.
yeah, it is, and when your folks or your parents are proud of you, or they, just by the way, maybe and when they're not proud of you. So my dad's 87 and mom's 85, and mom's failing a little bit. She doesn't know who I am anymore, but dad's still doing good. heck yeah, I could get him on a horse tomorrow if he wanted to. So.
Mm.
Wow. That's would be my goal at 87. Still be
Yeah,
kicking enough to be able to throw a leg across. That's pretty awesome.
yeah, he was. I don't know. He's such a character. Dad's like the life of the party. When he had his 86th birthday, I don't even know. You guys probably have to edit this, but his toast for his birthday was, he said, "Dear Lord, if I'd known I'd live this long, I wish you'd have left me my teeth and took my balls." But anyway, yeah,
That's
that what
funny.
a toast, right?
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Oh.
Yeah. So then what's your story, Gary? Like what do you do for a living, or what did you do for a living?
Well, I've been in the oil field in Alaska now for going on 24 years. Um, I I used to be horseback about 300 days a year before I was going up there, but now I'm probably horseback, I don't know, 60 to 80 days a year. I don't spend my focus isn't as much on the horses as it used to be. Um, my breeding program. Well, the thing of it is my my job in Alaska has been very good to me. So it's allowed me to afford to breed to some really good genetics. So I've been fortunate there, and that kind of from making from riding horses. Now I think my passion is more breeding and more trying to make that mare better, or trying to make and that's kind of why I got into the breeding, is because nobody's really making horses that I truly liked. The cutters were going small, and either had the thing about the quarter horse, they're from a little squatty guy up to a 16 plus handed running horse, and I mean the variety in the quarter horse deal, they don't even seem like they should be in the same breed, right? When you're going from like, especially like the old stocky bulldog type quarter horses to the running horses. I mean, those are two totally different horses, totally different.
Yeah.
So, to find that in between, I like a bigger horse. I like an athletic horse. You know.
Hmm.
Um,
And so with all that, when you said you were horseback, were you ranching when you were
yeah,
horseback?
yeah.
Okay.
I had about 200 head of cows, and and
Okay.
back, and then when I hit a couple tough years, I was leasing a lot of ground, and I had a good friend that worked on the North Slope, and said maybe I ought to try that. So I did, and it was a good move for me, and it allowed me to actually buy a ranch, and it allowed me to educate my children to get them good college. And that was my biggest deal, is where when I was doing what I was doing, I was leasing a lot of ground, and cattle prices weren't the best, and the horse market was terrible, and it was bothering me the most, is I wasn't going to be able to get my kids a good education. I was not making enough money to put away to send them, to school.
Mhm.
So that's what made me decide to do that.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
What particular skill set do you have up in the oil field?
That's a good question. Probably just oh man. Um I'm on the well end after the drill rigs come in and punch a hole and give us a viable well, then I take over. And us guys that do that, we're called drill site operators. We're the guys that keeps Alaska pipeline full of oil. And once it comes out of the ground, it goes to flow stations, and they, you know, coming out of the ground, it's called three phase. You have gas, oil, and water. And when it goes to the flow station, they have to refine it down to 99.9% pure crude oil to send it down the pipeline to Valdez, which is about 800 miles long. And so I'm on the end of getting it out of the ground, and keeping them flowing. It's which isn't easy to do, because sometimes you have 50 below and 50-mile-an-hour winds, and I don't know why God put all that oil under 1,200 feet of frozen tundra, but man, He did. And he said, "Man, I gotta find some guys to go up there and get it out." And it's kind of cool, And I deal
Wow.
with, especially this time of year, I see 2 to 10 polar bears a hitch in a 2 week time where they're coming in, and it's kind of neat to see the wildlife up
Wow.
there.
Is that ever a problem that guys get attacked by polar bears?
It's very rare. It's very rare, but there has been some deaths on the North Slope. Not many, but um, on the coastal areas, when we walk out of a building, they have what's called the bear cage. You walk into a bear cage where you can look, pretty much almost a 360-degree view, because all the buildings are probably 8 to 10 feet in the air. They're up on pilings, so you walk into that bear cage, you can get a 360-degree visual before you go out to get in your pickup or walk your wells or whatever. So
So are you spending time up there over the winter months?
yeah, year round, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Boy,
So
it's got to be hard to take global warming real seriously sometimes up there when you're out there in the cold.
yeah, it's always changing, right?
It's got to be cold. So
It,
you're out in like bundled up out in the weather. Do they have? Is it a lot of indoor work where you have
well,
shelters and stuff like
put
that?
it this way: don't ever get too far from my pickup.
Okay.
And I'm always running with the heater on. But no, I spend a fair amount of. Some days I spend quite a bit out. Some days not so much. We're required to walk our wells or look at them once a day. So yeah, you're out in it, and then if you have to hook up a flow line or do something, then yeah, you're out there fighting the elements. But you know you yeah, you'd get in trouble if you got frostbite up there. They don't like that. They don't want you staying out there where you get hurt or you get frostbite. So they take good care of us. It's
Hmm.
safety is
Wow.
very important.
And and the North Slope, like, how do you go about getting up there? Like, from your home where you work up there. What
I
does that
drive to
trip look like?
Bozeman. I'm about 80 miles, 70, 80 miles out of Bozeman. Get on a flight, fly into Seattle, switch planes from Seattle to Anchorage, and then from Anchorage I get on a company jet that flies us to the North Slope. It's about almost 800 miles from Anchorage to Dead Horse, Alaska, or Prudhoe Bay.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm,
How
I'm
much
looking
longer
at it
did?
on a map right now, and I'm not super familiar with Alaska, but I'm, I didn't even know there was anything up in that part of
Yeah,
Alaska.
we're just a little bit. I would say Nome is the highest point in Alaska. That's where the Iditarod ends, and we're to the east of that, and the Beaufort Sea comes down a little bit, so we're a little bit below Nome, but we're right on the Arctic Ocean, or it's better known as the Beaufort Sea.
Wow.
Wow. So what do you do for fun when you're up there, if you have any time?
Um, oh man, there's really not a lot of fun. We work long hours. We work, sometimes 100 hours a week. But the nice thing about it is I don't ever have to do a dish or cook a meal, or and I have a gal that comes in 2 or 3 times a week that tidies things up and changes sheets once a week. And but we have a really good workout facility, a great gym. They feed us really good. Um, you can eat really bad or you can eat really healthy. It just depends on you. And so,
Hmm.
Uh,
And what does, because obviously if you have a ranch in Montana, you're not up there all the time. What does a rotation look like up there?
Well, I have an alternate. When I'm home, he's in our room. We have a room. It's almost like a hotel room with he's got a big closet, I've got a big closet. And when I'm home, he's in it, and then when he goes home, I go up and I'm in it. And so and it's almost like a big Holiday Inn, big long hallways and rooms, and then we have a chow hall downstairs that cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then a spike room that has just it's amazing donuts and soups and sandwiches and yeah, anything basically you want, you can just walk in there, and ice cream machines, yogurt machines that it's all free.
Yeah.
It's all. So some guys, like I gain quite a bit. I fluctuate a lot. If I'm working a lot of hours, I don't eat well. I just get I don't. But if I'm doing a normal shift, I tend to eat better, and
Sure.
because I don't know,
But like when you leave your ranch in Montana to go work up there, how long are you expecting to be gone?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
With a day. Well, kind of about 16 days. I'm actually 16 days gone and
Hmm.
12 days
And is it
home.
like a
'Cause I got to
2
travel.
on, 2 off type deal, or
Yeah,
how
two
does that
weeks
work?
on, 2 weeks off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got over 1 million miles of air miles, and then my youngest son Tate, he takes care of the ranch while I'm gone, and
Okay.
works the
Very
other
cool.
places. So I have to take pretty good care of him if because I couldn't do it without him. I just couldn't do it without him. He's
Right.
Hmm.
takes care. He's not a horseman, but he's I don't know what's a good term for him. I mean, he takes really good care of him though. He's got a good eye for sickness and everything, but he doesn't
Hmm.
like to ride.
Huh.
And that's probably because of me, because I probably put too much pressure on him when he was a kid. I wanted perfection, and got to be careful on that. If you guys are raising kids with horses, make it fun. Make it
Yeah.
fun. Don't do the mistakes I made. Make it fun.
Yeah.
You know.
I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who's got a young kid and kind of interested, and like the kid is showing interest in horses for the first time, and she was asking me like, how do I foster that in the right way? And I mean, I don't have any children, so I don't know, but I'd be curious when you say make it fun, do you have any thoughts on I know you probably know what not to do, but like maybe expand
Well,
on what not to do, and then maybe if you had to do it over again, what would you try?
well, I would make sure that I had better horses to put my kids on than what I was putting them on. But because I don't know, I was probably a little more ranchier than most, and I didn't mind getting on a bad horse. So that's kind of what I rode. So my kids were more into sports and that than at that or early age, but make darn sure you got a good horse for them. Spend a little money, or make them a good horse.
Yeah.
And then make sure they're safe, so they're not scared, so they don't, because yeah, my kids were on horses that got run away with and that kind of stuff, and that was not all the time. My wife rode too, and she was not near as cautious as maybe I was about it, but yeah, kids got on a runaway horse or hurt or fell off,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not fun,
Mm-mm.
but to me, maybe back then it might have been. It might have, it just depends on the kid, like they say, it's just a kid's horse. It depends on the kid. You,
Yeah.
you look at like Lance and Sonny and Ricky and all these younger people than me, they're doing it right. Those kids are having fun on their horses, and so I wish I'd have probably been a little more cautious and made it more fun. Um, and not so critical. And if they are, they're not going to ride like you do or anything. And just let them have fun.
Yeah.
Pull a
So,
saddle off, let them go swimming, and
so speaking of kids, what was your perception of riding horses growing up? And did you see it as something fun, or was it more work? And then at what point did you realize you not only enjoyed it, but you wanted to make a real pursuit out of it?
well, I went for a while where there was times I got put on a horse with a with a bottle of water and a ham sandwich and told you I'll see you at dark. You go gather that. You go gather that 5,000 acre pasture, and we'll see you at dark, and don't miss nothing. Make sure you get them all. And that's on a maybe not the best broke horse, and maybe not but again, it depends on the kid who you do that to. And that, my dad treated me like a man, and gave me man work, and we were all driving to school, and way before we had our driver's license and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's different raising kids back then, I think, than it is now too.
Yeah,
I
because
want
you mentioned, sorry, you mentioned earlier that you were grateful for the way your dad treated you that way, and the responsibility you had, and how that affected you. But was that something that you recognized at the time, that you enjoyed, or
No.
at least appreciated, or how long did that take before you looked back and realized
Well,
how wonderful that was?
I can tell you my mom had it figured out, as if I was misbehaving, she would tell me, "Well, you're not going to get to go with your dad tomorrow." And it would crush me if I didn't get to go out and work with my dad, before I was in school or afterwards, and it's all she'd have to tell me. Every once in a while she'd say, "I'll wait till your dad gets home." But no, it was her punishment to me was, if you don't behave, you don't get to go with your dad tomorrow. You know,
Hmm.
you're going to stay home with me. So,
So
Wow.
so it sounds like you were pretty like, for better or worse, maybe you had to be and you just kind of embraced it, or maybe you're always like that. Sounds to me like you're a pretty gung ho kid.
well, I think, I've got two brothers that are that way too. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know, dad always says I raised three John Waynes. And we all have different interests. I'm of the three, I'm the only horseman. One's a fabulous builder in Washington, and the other's, he works in the oil field with me, but he's a heck of a pilot. He's got several float planes, and that's his hobby. And you go, it's fun to spend time with him in Alaska.
Hmm.
So
So,
yeah, he kind of raised us all the same. I probably got the best of it because just that times were better. Times were better back then, and um, I was raised more ranchy than they were.
hmm so to circle back around to Buck, it's interesting that you went to grade school with him, and then you end up, riding with him in the clinics and stuff. How did that come about, that you ended up learning horsemanship from him later on?
Well, there was a point in time where I was into it, and then I wasn't into the horses, and then I probably didn't get back into the horses until my late teens. There was, I'm going to say, maybe my high school years. I probably was more interested in athletics and that than I was the horse. But once I got out of high school, I got back into it, and then Buck was making great strides, and he was becoming Buck, and then was riding. I saw Ray Hunt before I ever rode with Buck, but I was just spectated him, and then you know got into watching Buck and Joe Walter and Brian Newbert. And of course, Ray, and got to see Tom one time. And
Did you
yeah,
ever consider did you ever consider making a living professionally as a horseman and kind of following the route those guys did?
no, I didn't, because I wasn't. That takes a special person to do that. Great public speaker, great. Just even though you even watched Ray Hunt ride, and Ray Hunt was an athlete. I mean, he was an athlete. I mean, and then then Buck, and plus they were so intelligent. What I mean, I always felt sorry for people that come after Ray Hunt and Tom. What the hell do you say that they haven't said? Right? What do you do that they haven't done? I mean, and then then you watch the Bucks and the Rickies and Joe Walters put on clinics, and they found that niche to where they had something to add. I was never like, I listened to Ray and I went, hell, I can't add to that. How do you add to what Ray Hunt said? But Buck has done it, and Joe has done it, and these guys have able to do that. I was never smart enough to be able to do that. And those guys, they're intelligent. To be able to make a living in that, they're just intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely
athletes.
they are. Absolutely.
Kurt Pate and all those guys, man, they found their niche, and if you look at those guys, they're extremely sharp and extremely athletic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just their ability to handle people, especially, right? Because if you're in the teaching, you're teaching horses and you're being an athlete, but you're also keeping an eye on all those people and making sure
But,
they're all there for something and they're paying for something. And so to make sure you deliver and keep everyone safe too, not to mention being a public speaker. So it's a lot of responsibility.
Back in the day, those guys were getting some nasty horses, and they were like, gosh dang, I always, with Buck and Ray and those guys, they give me the confidence to almost get myself killed, where I would maybe get on something, or I'd grab a hold of something that was probably, was a panther, but they'd give me that confidence to do that. Well, had I not had that experience, I'd have looked at that horse and went, no way, I'm walking away from that one. And I did. We all took some wrecks on it, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what else to say, but they were able to give you the confidence to handle those tough horses. And because there's a time in your life where you think, I can save every horse. I'm going to fix this horse. I'm going to get on it. I'm going to fix it. And even and even horses that I screwed up, I had to fix. But then you'd get some that were just like, I heard Tom Lawrence make a statement one time that really hit home with me, and it made me start changing my way of thinking. And he said, we have institutions for people too. Maybe that horse just can't be fixed. Maybe, or maybe it's maybe he's above your ability, and, but he did it. He said, we have institutions for people too. So maybe that horse is never going to be right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Buck has talked about that a few times. The folks that would show up with a real rank horse and kind of have it out for him, probably Do you remember any of those times specifically? Were you there
Well,
for one of
yeah,
those?
I do. Oh, you bet I do. And he had one himself that, that Biff horse that I don't know if you guys ever heard of Biff,
Yeah, a little
but
bit.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was probably, well, Buck had two horses, well, three horses that really, Biff was of all his horses was probably my all-time favorite because I saw what kind of horse he was. And he come off to Madison and I watched Buck working that horse, and that horse was, oh, yeah, at that time that horse would have killed me. It would have killed most people. And man, he stuck with it. And then, Biff probably packed him through the hardest of times. The hardest of times back when he was young and tough, and people were throwing this stuff at him, and he was just like, they were amazing. There was no quitting Biff, and then when he went to Sheridan, Wyoming, he saddled Biff up and won that horse race on Biff. And he was a big, sorrel, Roman nose, ugly horse, goose hipped, not a pretty horse, but gosh damn, what a horse, what a tough horse, and and then his arc horse is, oh man, maybe the finest horse I've ever seen. And I told him not to cut that horse. Well, Buck, well, I'm pretty knifey. I go, well, don't cut that one. Leave him a stud, and he cut him. And every time I seen him ride that horse, I go, I bet you're glad you cut him. I know I dig him bad for cutting the huevos that arc. Yeah. Well, I mean, what a beautiful horse. And I mean, to watch that horse work a cow the way, he was 16-1, and he would, when he'd do that 180-degree cow rollback, that horse would cover 30 feet from one side to the other. I mean, just there's no way a cow could get by him. I mean, just big horse would get down and just have that big sweeping 180-degree turn. It was just like, whoa. I don't know how you could ride it. The power, and what a beautiful animal.
Mm.
And then Rebel was really nice too.
So what is this horse race story? I haven't heard that before.
Well, they have in what is that called? Polo's big in the Sheridan area, and they have a big horse race that I don't know what is it? I don't even know how long it is, but all kind of the local guys, they kind of get in, and it's oh man, I can't even think of the guy's name, the saddle maker there in Sheridan that was so famous. So, gosh, I'm just drawing a blank anyway. It's kind of a big day where they have horse races and moxies and everything, and yeah, he saddled Biff up, and Biff wasn't a racehorse. He come off the Madison out of a pile of rocks, and Buck gets on him and wins the damn horse. I think it was like a half-mile race. And I asked Buck about it. I wasn't there. I didn't get to see it, but I know about it, and it was just amazing. That, and I'm quite sure Art probably could outrun Biff, but.
And how was now Ark's the horse that you see a lot, like in the documentary they did about Buck. He's riding.
Man, I think he's mostly on Rebel.
Oh, Rebel. Okay.
I don't know if you even see Ark you might in the documentary, but that's mostly Rebel or Charo.
Okay.
In that, but they were out of the same mother, that really great mare Mary had.
Okay.
That Lena mare. And he was, Mary is actually a very good breeder. She bred some really nice horses, and even above that, she was a very good caretaker. His horses always looked fantastic, and it wasn't because of Buck; it was because of Mary. Mary, raised those babies up, and they, were beautiful. I mean, beautiful. And she didn't overfeed them where they had bad feet and all that. She just, yeah,
Yeah.
nobody knows the background of that, but Mary kept bucking some pretty good horses.
When we had the Freliks on here, they mentioned when they got to selling some horses to Buck and Mary, and they'd sell them some foals, and then they see the horses a couple years later, and they'd be like the biggest, most impressive of those lines that they'd ever seen, and they attribute it just to the husbandry that Mary had
Yeah,
taking care of the horses. They said we've never seen the foals, from that mare, that stud turn out that good.
yeah, she knows how to feed. She does. I'm picking her brain all the time. And and she kind of tries to feed as economically as she can, and which I do too. You can pour a lot of money into these weanlings, and
Yeah.
but um yeah.
Hmm.
Huh. That's really
Well,
cool.
well, Gary, before we're done, let's talk about fishing a little bit. It's kind of hard not to. You've got a big old bass right above your shoulder there, and
Uh,
it's my understanding, the little I've heard about you, you're quite a fisherman and a terrific guide, I think, right?
I spent my early years on the Madison River, and guided professionally for about 20 years plus. And yeah, that's actually a steelhead behind me that I caught out on the West Coast. But a great friend of mine actually caught that, and then actually did it with rice paper. I don't know how. He's an artist. He's a cool guy. Russ Lamb did that. That's a picture of my first steelhead.
Mm.
And
Wow.
but yeah, fly fishing has been a passion of mine from a very young age. The I guess being raised on the Madison River, yet which is arguably maybe the most famous trout stream in the world. Right here where I live, we have so many blue ribbon trout stream. We're the headwaters of the basically the Mississippi River. The farthest in which water travels to the Gulf of Mexico is the headwaters of the Ruby River, which I could darn near step out and throw a rock from here to the Ruby River. So, and all these great tailwaters and stuff that come out of here, the fly fishermen flock in here, and that was always a connection with Buck and I, was the fishing, and beyond the horsemanship. Buck loved the bear trap, and the bear trap is a section on the Madison River. It's a 9-mile section that has 3 pretty tough rapids, and one rapid called the Kitchen Sink. And it's actually taken 9 lives. It's kind of a bad rapid.
Mm.
Depending on the water levels, it the toughness of it, or the scale of it goes up and down with water levels. But it's a very technical rapid to row because there's a lot of rocks in it. It's not like on the Colorado River. You just point your raft downstream and push through the big head walls and go over them. That's just this here. There's 4 or 5 moves you got to make in this rapid in order to get through it, or you flip your boat. And
Mm.
so it's and it and it's I think it's the best float in the lower 48 and probably anywhere. I mean, as far as fly fishing, it's fabulous. It's got the big granite cliffs that come down, and we get mountain goats and grizzly bear and black bear, rattlesnakes. It's kind of you see about everything down there, elk. But it keeps a lot of people scared off. The kayakers hit it pretty hard, but most the average floaters, you have to have a good raft to get down it and get through it, and some knowledge. Some guys luck through it, but
Hmm. Does Buck still
Yeah.
get up there and fish with you?
Oh, he hasn't for a couple of years, but he kind of golf has kind of taken over. A little bit more than fly fishing. But I think as he slows down and I slow down, yeah, that'll be back to it. We'll get back into it. Our lives have changed a little,
Yeah.
and he's not into driving all night from Sheridan to get here to fish, get on catch the salmon fly hatch or something like that the next day. We're kind of old to be doing that, but he used to. You know,
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
that golfing is.
Yeah, Gary, that's Ben kind of raised an interesting point there. Whether it's Buck Brannaman or whoever, it's pretty unique that you still have the relationship you do with someone you met, when you're like 12 years old. That's pretty
Yeah,
unique, I think.
it is, and um, it's kind of neat because do you have many childhood friends that you just absolutely admire? You know,
Yeah.
um, I do. I mean, I've got a circle of friends, but it's kind of cool when and when the admiration goes both ways.
Hmm.
It's kind of fun to do that, but and those are truly your best friends. And as you guys get older, you'll know, hey, I still admire that guy from grade school. You know,
Yeah.
he's done well. He's a good guy, and I enjoy having a beer with him, or I enjoy spending the time or the phone call you get. And, um, yeah, those friendships mean more and more as you get older.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Bet.
sure. But yeah, I just think that's so cool. You were describing that the fishing, and I've gone fishing, but I've never been fly fishing. And yeah, that's a real dream of mine someday. I've got a
Well,
few things that take priority, but down the list someday,
well,
I
yeah. Come
see
on,
myself standing in a Montana river fly fishing.
I'll I'll throw you in a boat and we'll go. And that was kind of fun because you know what, Buck always had the advantage because he had the loudspeaker right when I was at the clinic. But when I got him in the boat, he never got a second's rest because I rode him hard too. And my biggest deal is, hey, you're wasting water. Don't waste that water. Don't waste it. That's a bad cast. Don't waste it. Get on it. Get on it. Constantly. We actually, there was the best day of fishing I ever had was with Buck and the bear trap. We boated 108 fish. We got 108 fish to the boat.
Wow.
And I mean, and he was late. He was like a laser that day. He was like, and after about 50 fish, I go, put it right behind that rock or mend it. And there'll be one right there. And he kind of looks back. He goes, you're not much of a prophet, Gary. Every cast I make, there's a fish there. so I kind of shut up then. But yeah, I'm like a cheerleader on the oars, and I'm pumping the oars, and because I don't like wasting fly water. I'm working hard slowing that boat up, and you make the best of it. I've been I've been on camera said that there's a penalty in heaven for wasting fly water. Yeah.
So in the fly fishing world, is there an equivalent as far as like great fly fishermen you look to for advice or anything, or is that just been trial by error for you to become a better fisherman?
Oh no, I've got to fish with some great fishermen. I mean, Johnny France. Johnny France was the guy that had the lease on the bear trap that I worked for. He was the old sheriff that is actually Buck's stepbrother
Oh
or
yeah,
foster
yeah,
brother. Foster brother. He's the one that got Buck out of there. But Johnny was an incredible fly
mm,
fisherman, and his two boys, JT and Todd, were oh my, I'd put them up against anybody, guiding or casting or reading water or rowing a boat. Yeah, they're cut above. Oh geez, no, I've got to fish with some great fishermen. I mean, like, oh gosh, Dick Bass. He was the owner of Snowbird. He was the guy that wrote the book, The Seven Summits. A mountaineer. He was the first guy to climb the highest peaks on every continent. And I have him in the boat. And he was a dynamic speaker, and he made the day go by. I would have floated Dick Bass a week straight, never charged him a nickel. Just the stories he had, of my favorite story of his is where he got on a plane in Salt Lake and was flying to the East Coast, and he's sitting in first class next to this older gentleman, and Dick's a very talkative people person, dynamic speaker, and he's talking to this guy, and he's telling him about all his mountaineering, climbing Everest and everything. And the plane's about to land in New York, and goes, man, I'm sorry, I've done all the talking. And oh, what's your name? And gosh, I can't even think of the guy's name now. Who's the first? Oh, Neil. He goes, I've done all the talking, and you haven't hardly said a word. I'm Dick Bass. What's your name? I'm Neil Armstrong. He goes, you're shitting me. You're shitting me. You're the first guy to walk on. He was mad at himself because he did all the talking, and so he made Neil Armstrong go out to dinner with him.
Yeah, I'd find out where Neil Armstrong's flying to next and try to book the same flight and let him talk the next time.
Yeah, so that, just interesting people that I got to meet, because of floating the bear trap, most people that are able to afford a fishing guide and stuff are usually pretty well to do, and you get to meet some neat people.
So if you could put it into a couple of traits, what are some of the things that make a great fly fisherman or woman?
Well, because you have to be a people person, and you have to be a very good teacher. You have to, because not every day the bite is on, not every day the fish hit. So then you have to turn it into a casting lesson, and get them better. You just, and the technique, and, the airmans, and, just helping them. It's not easy to learn. It's not easy. It's kind of like groundwork, how, you think, oh, groundwork's no big deal until you start doing it. And then, until you can write the doctoral thesis on groundwork, you're probably not going to be good at it, So, that's the basic, is the cast. So there's a lot to it. It's about timing. It's about strength and about reading water. And, there's sometimes if you're 2 inches off on a cast, you're not going to get a fish, and if you don't get a good long float or with an airman, there's so much to it that you can. And there's a lot of great videos out there that help you, but and you got to get out and do it. You just got to get out and do it, and get good. So instead of a day of great fishing, it's a day of great casting. It's a casting lesson, and when they get out of your boat, they better be better fishermen, or you haven't done your job. So,
wow, yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
oh, it is, because it's not like sitting on the bank bait fishing. It's you're active. When you get done at the day of fly fishing, if you've done it correctly, you're wore out. You're wore out, and your eyes are burning, and your arms are hurting from the cast, and then. Yeah. But it's a good tired.
Yeah, I hope I don't offend anybody, but yeah, I think bait fishing is kind of the equivalent of these guys hunting whitetail out of a deer stand. overlooking a cornfield or like a little bait patch, and they got their coffee and their Facebook, on their phone, and they just kind of wait around till a
Well,
big boy walks out and they pop him. And which, if you're getting
yeah,
your protein that way, that's great. But in terms of a hunting experience, it's kind of like bait
it's
fishing on
yeah.
a dock or something. Yeah.
I always say I'd rather have a sister in a whorehouse than a brother that was a bait fisherman.
I think we just found another T-shirt, Joe.
Yeah, there you go.
Uh,
Oh, that's pretty good. That's kind of probably a good place to land the plane right there.
okay.
Unless you had something else, Joe.
No, I mean, well, I do. I could
Oh, let's keep going.
honestly, Gary, the biggest thing I've gotten out of this is your number, because I'm probably going to be picking your brain the way you pick some people's brains about horses, because I'm the the whole breeding and evaluating horses thing. It seems endless to me, but I really do appreciate you making the time for us to come on here and give us your 2 cents about everything, because you've been a wealth of information, so I
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you, Joe. I don't know if I've ever had an original idea in my life because I've seeked knowledge from the best brains I could pick. So
Sure.
I don't know if I've ever had an original idea. So, but
Hmm. Well,
Well, Gary,
the
I
good
think
news is
I was
I
just
don't
going to say, I
particularly
think,
care if the
yeah,
ideas come from you or not, Gary. I just want good ideas.
that's right. I'm the same way. I'm the
Yeah.
same way.
yeah. It doesn't seem like any of us do. I don't think any person on earth really does. It's like if you're switched on more than someone else, maybe you can gather ideas, but we're all receptors. It's not like any of us. Um, but I think that's an encouraging way to look at it, because when you say that and is smart and intelligent and all the things that I learned from listening to you, to hear you say that, it's like, well, hey, maybe someday I'll have something to say too if I keep my mind and ears open and learn, and
Yeah.
you know just
Yeah.
enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Just, be open minded, but don't be so open minded your brains fall out.
So
Good way to look at it.
so this would be, I guess, my concluding question then, Gary, because it you seem like a guy who has a lot of passions, and it's really fun to hear you talk about them. Um, and it sounds like you do kind of enjoy what you do up in Alaska, but as you said, you are going to be slowing down, and I don't know what you're like, if you have retirement plans or not. But say one day that does happen, what does that look like in terms of maybe your fishing habits or your horse herd or your cow herd, or what does Gary Meyer's future look like right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm hoping to retire here within a couple years. And put it this way, Gary is not going to be bored in retirement. I'm
I
gonna
bet.
I'm gonna keep fishing and hunting and and raising babies and maybe get back into making bridle horses again, which I haven't produced a bridle horse in a few years. So yeah,
Well, good.
bridle horse. I can see a couple more bridle horses in my future. Where um, the thing, like I told Buck this the other day. I said, not only do you have a pasture full of bridle horses, you've got a graveyard full too. Not
Yeah.
many guys can say that.
Mm.
Mm-mm.
So,
No, it's an impressive resume for sure.
mhm.
Cool. Well,
Alrighty.
I I hope you get to do all that and more, Gary. But
Well, I
again,
hope I haven't rattled too much, guys. And you guys do a great job interviewing, by the way.
yeah. Well, thanks. Well, I- it's kind of like horses, making good horses. I feel like you can make a good interview if you pick a good guest out to start, and then you can just kind of do some things here, do some things there to make a good interview. But part of making a nice horse is buying a nice horse or breeding a nice horse.
Mhm.
It helps to have a lot to work with, and we've been very fortunate that pretty much all the guests on our show we've had a lot to work with. So
Good.
Yeah,
Keep
in the
it
infamous
going.
words of Bill Barnes, you can't make a purse, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So
It's true. It's true. Yeah, you start with a good one, and it just goes from there.
yeah. All right, don't go anywhere. We're gonna hang up, but
Okay.
hang tight. We'll see you in a minute.
All right.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you are, pause for a moment and head on over to Spotify or Apple. There you can leave us a review and you can follow the podcast. These actions help us by pushing the podcast out to new audiences who have not found us yet. And that in turn allows us to keep on doing what we do best, bringing you guys new, fresh, exciting content and interviews week by week. Thank you guys.